This is where I'd like to invite Ian and Mandy Worby, our dear friends, to share with us about a project to support Israeli communities rebuilding after the Gaza war. Ian has been involved with Christians for Israel now for how long?
Since 2012.
Since 2012. And Mandy hosts a radio program on Vision Radio, and both have a huge heart for Israel. So let's give them a huge welcome.
Thank you, Enoch. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I just flew in from New Zealand. I was attending a funeral. One of our directors for United Christian Broadcasters passed away, and so we were there, but great to be here with you. Actually, Mandy got involved with the Christians for Israel, with the newspaper, even before I got involved. She was a subscriber to it for many years. And we got asked if we would take it on, and together we've seen it grow and develop. And as Enoch said, we can sit around, we can have a talk fest, and we can talk about, and we can say, we're going to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and all of these things, and we can pontificate, and speculate, what's next in God's agenda. But I believe that we serve a very practical God, and the book of James says that faith without works is dead. Jesus himself said that people will know that you are Christians or followers of Yeshua by your love one for another. And in Matthew's gospel, Jesus is talking to the disciples, and he says to them, when I was thirsty, you gave me water. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was sick, you came and you tended me. When I was in prison, you visited me. And they said, when, Lord? When did we do all these things? And he said, when you did this to the least of these, my brethren, you did it unto me. And when you didn't do it to the least of these, my brethren, you didn't do it for me. So I think there's a great encouragement for us to rise above the rhetoric and the words and so on, and to say, Lord, how can I demonstrate your love to the Jewish people? Because, for the most part, most of our Jewish brothers and sisters in the land of Eretz Israel, they are blind to the identity of their Messiah. So I'm just going to ask Mandy just to expand on that, and then I'll come back and I'll tell you about the project, because I think it's very important for us to have an appreciation and an understanding of why Jews are a little bit apprehensive when they meet up with Christians. So it can be tricky to navigate, but I think Mandy's got a pretty good handle on that. So you just want to share a few things about.
Sure. No, that's right. And I didn't know you were going to do that to me. It's true. You don't blame somebody and condemn them because they can't see. I mean, if a blind person or a lame person or a deaf person walked in here, you wouldn't tell them off because they couldn't make their way to the front. If they can't see, they can't see. And it's a judicial blindness. God put that blindness on them. And I also want to just point out that the judicial blindness was a result of a handful of the religious leaders. The entire nation of Israel, the Jewish people, did not reject Jesus. It was their leadership. When we have the Australian ambassador to the UN, right? They sit in the UN and they vote according to the sitting government that we have. And when they pass that vote, regardless of how you and I feel about it, we, as a collective people, are now under that ruling. We might go, we don't agree with that. But guess what? They represent us. Therefore, the consequences of the vote that they make against Israel is on us. And that is what happened with the Jewish people. Their leaders, a handful of them, because there were religious leaders that did believe in Jesus. Nicodemus is just one. Joseph of Arimathea is another. But a handful of those leaders, by rejecting Jesus, brought a judicial blindness on the whole. There's always been a remnant of Jews who've believed, but on the whole, this is where this blindness comes from. We don't get to condemn them for that. Paul said we're supposed to provoke them to jealousy, and the Christian church for the past 1800 years has been abysmal in their treatment of the Jewish people. We've got a lot of ground to make up for. We have been dreadful. And guess what? Most of us don't know the extent of it. And that is why they're so hesitant and resistant toward Christians. They're expecting us to be their enemies. They're expecting us to hate them. And they're expecting us to do it all under the banner of a cross and in the name of Jesus. We have to start loving these people very, very practically. And when you show them love, when you step out and you say, listen, whether you believe in Jesus or not, I wish you would, but if you don't, I am going to stand shoulder to shoulder with you no matter what. And then when they know that they have real friends and they're beginning to understand right now, who was it? There was somebody in the Knesset, I believe, just in the last few days has said that there was actually a meeting within the Knesset. I'm sorry, I can't remember who was leading it, but they basically said Christians are our last friends in the world. That's saying something. Consider they believe that Christians are their enemies. So we have an opportunity to love them whether they believe in Yeshua or not. And that means being very, very practical. Okay? It means showing them that we love them, not just telling them that we love them. It means speaking up, open your mouth, put on a pin, wear a flag, get on Facebook and say something good about the Jewish people. And take the opportunities as they come. But educate yourself so you're not speaking blindly. All right? And there's plenty of truth out there if you'll dig or ask.
Thanks, Mandy. Very good. You can hear Mandy weekdays on the Vision Radio Network. She does a 10-minute program called Foundations, connecting to the Hebraic roots of the Christian faith. She's been doing that for a couple of years now and gets lots and lots of really good feedback. And probably one of the most common comments is something like, I've been a Christian for 30 years and I've never heard any of that information shared across the pulpit at my church, and yet you've showed me where it is right there in my Bible all along. I didn't know about that. So it's also available on podcasts and that there as well. So I'm really privileged that we've got Mandy. She's quite a scholar when it comes to helping us to understand, our Hebraic roots and the rest of it all. So Christians for Israel. The president of Christians for Israel, Reverend Willem Glashow, he often quips that our message is in our name. We are Christians for Israel, as opposed to Christians against Israel. And you think, that sounds a bit of an oxymoron, but I'm really sad to say that within Christendom, since probably the Council of Nicaea, in the year 325 or whenever it was, when they separated themselves from the Jewish people and they said, we will have nothing to do with these Jews, and that's when they changed the dates and the seasons, and they were no longer going to celebrate Passover on Nisan 14, but they would celebrate Easter, and they would introduce another festival. It was basically modelled on Saturnalia for December 25, and a whole lot of other stuff that was grafted in to the so-called Christian church. Because, how many of you know that the original church was almost 100% Jewish up until about the end of the first century? Okay, it really wasn't until Peter went up the coast to Caesarea and shared the gospel with the Cornelius and so on, and then they went and took the gospel to the four corners of the world around there, and then eventually, after 135 AD, under Emperor Hadrian, they expelled a lot of the Jews out of Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, and they renamed the area after their ancient enemies, Philistia, the Philistines, and renamed Jerusalem Annalina Capitolina after one of the emperor's wives or something like that. So that's where a lot of that history entered in, and I think we have an obligation to try to mend the breach of all of those years of anti-Semitism, where people were accusing the Jews of killing God and the rest of it all. Jesus said, no man takes my life. I lay it down of my own accord. And if I lay it down, I'll pick it up again, okay? And so we do read that there is a coming judgment. You can read that in Joel 3. It says that the days are coming when the Lord's going to bring all the nations of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat, which literally means where the Lord will judge. That's the Kidron Valley between the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount. And he's bringing them there for judgment, and he's judging them for two things. One, how did you treat my people Israel? Okay? And number two, because you divided my land, says the Lord. So for people who get involved in this political discussion about a two-state solution, it might make good sense from humanly speaking, but we have to say, what does God have to say about this? And so we shouldn't, we should say, look, there's going to be a judgment if we get involved in dividing God's land. And so Christians for Israel for over 40 years has been demonstrating God's love by the Christian church unconditionally, no strings attached. We love them regardless. We even love them knowing that some of them are a bit hostile towards us. We found out years ago that one of the terms of endearment for our Jewish local born and bred citizens is sabra. Sabra literally means prickly pear. Tough and thorny on the outside, but soft and sweet on the inside. And so what you'll often find is that when you're speaking to a local resident Jew, at first they'll be a bit standoffish and a bit thorny because they're not sure what's our motivation. Are we trying to convert them? Are we going to point the finger at them and tell them that they're guilty of genocide and all sorts of things? But when they realise that no, we're actually for them and that we're loving them unconditionally and that we're wanting to help them and to stand with them so that they're not alone, well, then you've never had a friend until you have a Jewish friend who wants to be with you, soft and sweet on the inside. So I want to encourage you to do that. So one of the things that we've decided to do not long after October 7 happened, Mandy and I were actually just entering into the land the day after October 7. We'd been through Egypt and Jordan. We were on the last leg of our tour in Jordan at Petra when our phones started going off with the alarms and they went berserk because 5,000 rockets were launched at 6 o'clock in the morning and then all hell literally let loose on 22 kibbutzim along the Gaza envelope. This was while Israel was supposed to be under a ceasefire. And so you had all these Hamas, the media calls them militants, but just they were absolute terrorists committing barbarism. But not only that, sad to say, a lot of citizens also joined in and committed atrocities and were involved in rape and pillage and so on. And so, unfortunately, we weren't able to stay in the land. We were told we had to leave. They were going to be closing the border. Everyone protested. Everyone wanted to be there to stay. But we had to cross back over and so on. So when we got back to Australia, I contacted my very good friend, the ambassador Amir Mammon, the ambassador of Israel, and he said, can you organise a group of Christians? So we had about 20 prominent Christians on a private Zoom call, and he gave us a briefing about what had happened and what had taken place. And then he encouraged us because he recognised, he said, you Christians are our best friends and allies. And he asked us, would we consider getting involved in an initiative called Adopt an Israeli Community? Those 22 kibbutzim were totally decimated with the massacre that took place. You know, today over 150,000 Israelis have been displaced from their homes, not only from the Gaza envelope or the Gaza Strip area, but also up in the north because of the threat from Hezbollah, from 150 to 200 rockets that are aimed at them, thousands of rockets, 200,000 rockets, and these rockets have got GPS and everything. So it's an existential threat for them, and there's so much trauma. I mean, we hear stories of the children who who can't sleep at night, who are wetting their beds, who tell their parents, keep checking, that the doors are locked and things like that. They can't go back to those areas and they're suffering trauma, and we want to help them to rebuild. And so we got alongside the Embassy of Israel, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we've put up $100,000 as a matching gift to encourage Aussies to be generous. And for, like if you give $50, that'll be $100 that'll go towards helping these communities. And this is a long time commitment. This is going to take months, maybe even years for some of these communities to be restored. And already, since the newspaper came out, and Rudy and Melanie are here today, and if you haven't got the newspaper, I encourage you to get that. On the back of the paper, you can fill in to say what projects you'd like to sponsor. They're all tax deductible, but this particular initiative, I think we've nearly got 40,000 has come in already. So I was speaking to the ambassador the other day, and I said, look, I really hope that by the end of February, we'll be able to send off $200,000 at least to show our love and our support from Australia to these communities. And the other thing we're working on, and we'll let you all know, is we're wanting to put together a solidarity tour. And that's where we'll take one or more busloads of people who want to volunteer, who want to come along and just love on the locals, and whether it's peeling potatoes and helping cook meals or just helping out around the place. A lot of the country is struggling because I had over 300,000 people enlisted as reservists to go into the army. So a lot of the fruit and the vegetables are just, rotting out in the fields. Lots of things aren't happening. So if volunteers can come along, we can try and fill in the gap. But the best thing that can happen is just knowing that we've come all this way for no other reason, and just to say, we wanted you to know that you're not alone. We're not here as fair weather friends. We're here knowing, yes, there's a degree of danger in being there because Israel is a war zone. Obviously, we're not going to go deliberately to places where it's like super dangerous. But if you're interested in possibly coming on a solidarity tour, we'd love to hear from you. So please get the information that is in the newspaper, or you can go to our website, which is c4israel.com.au, and you can make a tax-deductible donation. Of course, after the sessions today, if you want to come and speak to Mandy and myself, we'd love to chat with you. I can see a few familiar faces there, and thank you for coming here today. And we really appreciate it. So look, let's demonstrate and show our love and our generosity. I often say, if you were arrested for being a Christian that's supposed to be, standing with our Jewish brothers and sisters, would there be any evidence to convict you? Let's stick our head above the parapet, and together we're much stronger, and we can send a very strong message, not only to the enemies of Israel, but also to our Jewish brothers and sisters, to let them know that we genuinely love them unconditionally. And we'll let the Holy Spirit take care of, their eternity. We obviously believe that there's only one way of salvation, and that is, under the name above every other name. But I think by demonstrating our unconditional love, that will speak so much stronger than just a bunch of words. So thank you for that. You want to share something, Mandy, before we go?
One more thing. I got in a Telegram channel that I every day that I get from is Amir Safati, who is a Messianic Jewish Bible teacher living in Israel. And he put something out this morning. He said he has so many churches and church leaders around the world that he is connected with, he's spoken with, and they're friends with. And since October 7, the majority of them have been silent. And he said, how can you say you're a Christian but you won't stand up for the state of Israel, the birthplace of your faith, the nation from which you have your Messiah, and you're silent? And that is speaking volumes, once again reinforcing to the Jewish people that Christians say one thing but they do something else. We have an opportunity to blow that out of the water, if we will.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.